How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. We just got the master plan. This is a video that absolutely blew up. Whitney, Webb talking about Bitcoin, talking about stablecoins, talking about the elite. And today, July 4 is when I plan on releasing this, the Freedom Day in a lot of Americans' eyes. I think it's important to look at what the billionaires are doing, not just what they're saying, not just the headline for why they're getting into stablecoins and Bitcoin, but really what's happening behind the scenes. So big shout out to Library of Wealth. This is a video that he posted a while ago, so we're going to be reviewing the video a bit. Also, if you do want to trade crypto, there are links underneath the video. I like to trade. 2 days ago, I talked about how I thought we were going to break out above this line. We got rejected by this 3 different times, but we started to rally up, and I said, hey, I think we're going to break out, probably come back down, flip this into support, flip this prior resistance into support, and at the time of this recording, July 3, this is what's happening. If you do want to trade crypto, right, anything can happen in the next day, so maybe we're down from here. But if you do want to trade crypto, there's a link to BTCC, BYDFi, and BitUniX. That's where the majority of people sign up. So they have great bonuses going on right now. BYDFi has a new special bonus. The more you put on, the more you get in extra rewards, but you get basically 20% bonuses, maybe 10% on the higher end, but 10 to 20% bonuses just for depositing on the platform. And you get some special bonuses when you trade stuff too. Same thing with BitUniX as well. Thank you so much, and let's get over to the video.
The Sustainable Development Goals have been developed essentially by bankers. You could describe it, or I would describe it, as a global Wall Street coup, essentially, but transnational finance. You have people like Mark Carney, former Goldman Sachs, former head of Bank of England, Bank of Canada, Financial Stability Board, aider and abetter of HSBC's money laundering for drug cartels. He's the person that's in charge of climate action for the United Nations. Their other point man is Mike Bloomberg, former Salomon Brothers, former mayor of New York, billionaire guy. And if you think these people care about the environment and sustainable development and building a more inclusive world, I'm sorry, but you have been had. So these are the people that are essentially behind a lot of the net zero plans, behind a lot of the other SDG plans that essentially move us from the model, the free market capitalist model, into more this technocratic model where, every commodity, everything is going to be tokenized. And you've seen Larry Fink in the past couple of days be very open about that, following the approval of the BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, for example, talking about the tokenization revolution and all of this. But there's an effort here to take this, much farther than it's ever been taken before, and to essentially just not just tokenize, existing assets or traditional assets, but also create new asset classes like natural assets, all these natural asset corporations that have sort of been in the news lately and have sort of, received some pushback. But there's definitely a lot of efforts underway to essentially tokenize the whole planet, increase the amount of assets in the existing economy by being like, now this lake is an asset, now this forest is an asset, and all of this stuff, tokenize, fractionalize it, and basically create this insane new financial system that's different than previous financial systems. But everything, including nature and humans, will be tokenized and traded like financial products. And that's essentially what a lot of this is leading to. And you have most of the countries on the world, those that are pursuing Agenda 2030, essentially leading us into that. And so, at some level, I think the geopolitical push and pull between, BRICS and the West is real. But I think, at the higher levels, they ultimately agree on the goals. So I don't really think one is necessarily a true effective challenge to the other. And if you're against the ambitions of the SDGs and Agenda 2030, then you should be against them regardless of if they're being championed by Russia and China or the United States and the EU. Ultimately, it leads us to the same place. which is going to financialize and tokenize everything, but also surveil everything to an unprecedented extent, and increasingly uses, debt slavery. The Mark Carney and Fink and all of these guys, under the auspices of the UN, talked about reimagining the World Bank and the IMF, all the multilateral development banks, for the purpose of basically using debt to finance the SDGs and doing all these things like debt for climate swaps, debt for nature swaps, which are essentially, land grabs and all sorts of things, framing it as, necessary to save the planet.
Webb foresees a looming economic catastrophe driven by collapsing fiat money systems, rampant inflation, and bank failures. She suggests transitioning to a Bitcoin standard might be on the horizon as the world grapples with the impending crisis. She asserts that the promises made by the Federal Reserve and central banks have been hollow, leading to excessive money printing and a proliferation of poor investments. And with the aftermath of the recent inflation surge, Webb says this will not lead to a return to the status quo.
And maybe that justification works for the left, but I think it would be naive to assume that they aren't going to retool the talking points to appeal to the right. I think that's definitely going to be happening. And if you look at Fink himself, he's tried to go away from being the point man for ESG and all of this towards a guy that's saying, like, look how profitable this is going to be for us. And you can have a part of the riches by tokenizing your land and putting it on this platform where it can be traded and whatever. Like, you can have a piece of all this wealth and whatever. I think.
Okay, now there are obviously benefits to doing this, right? Like, if you can tokenize real estate, it unlocks investment returns for a lot of people that couldn't afford real estate before. You can buy a fractional piece of some Miami mansion that's an Airbnb, right? There are some companies already doing that. But really, keep in mind too that BlackRock wants that done because they can essentially get their hands on asset classes that they have nothing to do with right now, or make it much larger, right? If they could tokenize 100,000 homes, 100,000 Airbnbs, and they get little fractions of everyone selling and buying and the cash flow, that unlocks a lot of money for them. And you can see recently, it just came out that BlackRock actually makes more now from their Bitcoin ETF than they make from the S&P 500, their S&P 500 fund. And their S&P 500 fund is 9 times bigger. And there are secondary effects to this too, which we've talked about in previous videos. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but they make more than just the obvious number, the 0.25% times their AUM. They make more than that. So now they're making 180 million. And since yesterday when that came out, Bitcoin's up like 2% or something like that. So all of a sudden they make another $4 million a year. It doesn't seem like a lot, but Bitcoin's volatility is so high and the potential is so high, even with their AUM right now, or even with their Bitcoin under management right now, Bitcoin could easily go up 50%, and then they're making so much more than the S&P 500. And going on to what they talked about before, or what Whitney talked about before, the proliferation of stablecoins. We've seen that happen so much over the last year. We've seen Trump and the government really push for stablecoins, and they say that's because it will be the biggest buyer of U.S. debt, which is definitely the headline reason why they want people to use stablecoins. But there is maybe a darker reason for it. It could be because you can see transactions a lot easier. Right? You can work with USDC or USDT or whoever it is that is pushing these stablecoins, and you can see every single transaction. Now, you might say, well, you can do that already. But, people use different credit cards. People use different bank accounts. I guess that could happen with stablecoins too, but I think it'll be much easier to turn on and off money to look at all the transactions if it's on the blockchain. So with that in mind, let's get back into the video here and we'll talk a little bit more.
I think that's how they're going to try and and frame it. And I think people need to be very, very aware, because, you know, the efforts to manipulate us to acquiesce to this system are unprecedented. And I think ultimately, if you have a good grasp of what they want to enact on the global stage, regardless of the justifications or the political figures they use, or influencers and media that they try to use to sell this to you, if you are firm in your opposition to these agendas, then you'll be able to sort through the nonsense. Because as you said, you know, all the stuff coming out online is increasingly just so psyop after psyop after psyop. And, you know, it's hard to know who to trust and who to believe, what have you. But if you know that the end goal is global governance, mass surveillance, the end of privacy, all of that, you can look at who is pushing those agendas and say no. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to say no. You have to know what your red lines are, and you have to make it about trusting your red lines and trusting where you stand, not so much trusting this political savior or that political savior or this media influencer, which I think a lot of people have been doing. And I think it's definitely time for another model, particularly when it comes to US presidential politics, because how many times can we vote for the lesser of two evils and have a good outcome? You know, it's never happened, and it's not going to keep happening. And, you know, all of these efforts, you know, in the case of Trump, to like explain away his decisions last time and act like it's going to be different this time. We can't wait to see what's going to happen this time. The situation has come to a head arguably already, and it's up to people to find local solutions and build something with their communities that will help them protect, you know, help everyone in that community protect themselves against all these stressors and crises that are to come. Because waiting for the right guy to get in the White House, regardless of who he is and whatever intention and motivation he has, one guy in the White House is not going to solve all of this, because arguably, you know, the president is really a figurehead, because at this point, the U.S. is so bureaucratic and massive.
I think at the end of the day, you have to realize that all these politicians, all these businessmen, they want three things, essentially. They want money, they want data, they want to control, they want to have that authority to be able to do what they want. We'll just stick with those three. So money and data allow them to control you. Obviously, stablecoins can be beneficial, right? You can send and receive transactions for a minimal fee, and you can do it in real time. There are benefits. I'd still say the benefits outweigh the negatives, but you have to look at people's underlying reasons for doing things. Now, what can we do, right? What can we do in a world where, you know, the billionaires have a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of control, a lot of data? Well, you can invest in things that can't be manipulated so much, like Bitcoin. Of course, the price can go up and down if someone sells. And I think Trump already realizes that this is going to be massive, because he has a Bitcoin mining company, he has a Bitcoin purchasing company, he has a Bitcoin ETF company. He's accumulating a lot of Bitcoin. He realizes that we're going to print a lot of money. He's trying to pass this big, beautiful bill. But obviously, like on today, July 4 is when I plan on releasing this. It's important now more than ever to have your hands on something that you can control, right? Like Bitcoin. Of course, it's not a fail-safe, right? Not everything will be fixed by Bitcoin, but it's definitely a good start, right? If you have money, you have flexibility. You have the ability to do what you want when you want. You have the ability to say no to things that you would otherwise have to say yes to. So yeah, maybe Bitcoin's something you want to look into on today. I think, you know, today's Freedom Day in the eyes of a lot of Americans, and Bitcoin is freedom. So I wanted to bring this video to you. Big shout out to Library of Wealth as well. Thanks for, you know, putting that B-roll in and stuff. It's interesting to look back at videos from a year ago that blew up, and I think, yeah, they're still really relevant today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Check out the links to BYDeFi, to BTCC, and BitUnix. All of them have special bonuses for signing up, and you can leverage long. And we're at such a key level on Bitcoin right now. You may consider getting a little bit of extra exposure. I know that I'm extra exposed with some leverage trades. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the next one.